We are 10 days away from UFC 300, and we're 10 days away from seeing Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan, my most anticipated matchup on UFC 300. And in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys my breakdown and prediction for this fight. Like I said, it is my most anticipated fight on the card. I believe that it is MMA at the highest level. I think it's the most skilled matchup on the card. So much at stake for both these fighters and the future of the lightweight division. I cannot wait to see this fight. I mean, Dana White has said that the winner of this fight will be granted a title shot and full custody of Beneil Dariush, since both fighters are coming off knocking out Dariush. So Charles Oliveira, he wants a rematch against Islam Makhachev. He wants to reclaim his belt. Arman Tsarukyan wants his first crack at the title, and he also wants a rematch against Islam Makhachev, who he first faced in 2019 when he was only 22 years old. So there's a lot at stake for both these fighters. I feel like this is a very skilled matchup. Obviously, Charles Oliveira is one of the most skilled fighters in the lightweight division. Arman Tsarukyan is one of the best grapplers, if not the best grappler. I mean, I don't know if he's the best pure MMA grappler, but he's one of the best grapplers in the lightweight division. A lot of momentum, young, huge prospect in the lightweight division. And I really do believe that this was the fight to make, because look, Charles Oliveira pulled out of his fight against Islam Makhachev last October due to a cut. And at the time, I remember wondering, like, okay, what's going to happen with Charles Oliveira? Is the UFC going to grant him a title shot again and make that rematch in early 2024? Or is the UFC going to move on and make Islam Makhachev versus Justin Gaethje and then Charles Oliveira fights the winner? But no, the UFC has decided to make Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan, which I think it's an amazing matchup. I mean, I really do love this matchup. And I really do believe that Arman Tsarukyan is the real deal, man. He's improving. He's only 26 years old. The fact that he faced Islam Makhachev when he was 22 years old, he's improving his striking. His grappling is already one of the best in the division. And I absolutely love this fight. I really, really do love this fight. And look, if I thought Charles Oliveira was facing a can, I would not be that excited for the fight. But because I do believe that Arman Tsarukyan is the real deal, it makes this matchup very, very interesting. But let's get to the tail of the tape. Charles Oliveira, 34 years old, has a record of 34 wins, 9 losses, stands in at 5 feet, 10 inches tall, has a 74-inch reach, fights from the orthodox stance, and is ranked number 1 in the lightweight division. Arman Tsarukyan is 27 years old, has a record of 21 wins, 3 losses, stands in at 5 feet, 7 inches tall, 72.5-inch reach, fights from the orthodox stance, and is ranked number 4 in the lightweight division. Now let's look at the win percentage for Oliveira. Obviously, Oliveira has 10 KOs, 21 submissions, and 3 decisions, which means that his percentage for a KO is 29%, his percentage for a submission is 62%, and his percentage for a decision is 9%, which means that when Charles Oliveira is winning, it's most likely by a finish, most likely by a submission. He rarely goes to a decision, in any of his fights. And Arman Tsarukyan, on the other hand, has 9 wins by KO, 5 submissions, and 7 decisions, which means that his KO percentage is 43%, his submission percentage is 24%, and his decision is 33%. So Arman Tsarukyan is clearly winning by either KO or decision, and his only submissions are actually outside of the UFC. Arman Tsarukyan has 0 subs in the UFC. Now, when it comes to their losses, 8 out of 9 losses that Charles Oliveira has been by a finish. Either that be a submission or a KO. So when Charles Oliveira loses, it's most likely by a finish. Now, 2 out of 3 of Arman Tsarukyan's losses has been by decision. 1 being a very controversial decision to Gamrot, and 1 being to Islam Makhachev. So when you put that into perspective, Arman Tsarukyan should probably be on a pretty good win streak. I mean, if you give that decision to Arman Tsarukyan, that Gamrot decision to Arman Tsarukyan, then that means that Arman Tsarukyan might be in a 10-fight win streak. And probably his last loss would be to Islam Makhachev, who, like I said, he faced when he was only 22 years old. And that fight was actually pretty competitive. I mean, the scrambles were very high level. And even though Arman Tsarukyan was very young, he showed that he had a lot of potential. So that says a lot about Arman Tsarukyan. The fact that, in my opinion, he hasn't lost in quite a while, because I really do believe that he won that fight against Gamrot. And I know that he has that loss on his record, but like I said, Arman Tsarukyan is not a fighter that's being finished. I mean, he's never been submitted. His only loss has been by KO TKO when he was only 18 years old. So Arman Tsarukyan has a lot of momentum right now. He really does have a lot of momentum. Like I said, Charles Oliveira has had a lot of losses in his career. He's been finished. He's been submitted. He's lost decisions. But let's be honest. I mean, Charles Oliveira has been fighting in the UFC since 2010, 2011. I believe it's 2011, which is pretty insane, man. It's pretty insane. So I think we have to keep that noted. I'm glad that I brought the statistics when it comes to this fight because I think that's going to play a role in my prediction. And this is a fight, guys, where I went back and I watched a lot of tape because I really, really do care about this fight. Look, I understand it's MMA. And, the person that I might be picking to win this fight might lose because that's MMA. Anything could happen on any given night. I understand that's how the game goes, but I really do feel like I have a good grasp of how this fight is going to play, whether Charles Oliveira wins or Arman Tsarukyan wins. I really do feel like I have a good grasp on this fight. Now, of course, the first thing that people are going to bring up when discussing this fight is that, both of them are coming off knocking out Beneil Dariush. However, I've heard a lot of different arguments. I mean, I've heard people say that are picking Arman Tsarukyan that, well, Arman Tsarukyan knocked out Beneil Dariush faster than Oliveira did. But I also think the counter to that would be, okay, yes, that's true. Arman Tsarukyan did knock out Beneil Dariush faster and more clean, I guess a more clean performance than Charles Oliveira. However, Charles Oliveira knocked out Beneil Dariush when Beneil Dariush was on a 10-fight win streak. You know what I'm saying? So that has to be, I feel like when we bring these things up, they have to be applied in context because when you just say Arman Tsarukyan knocked out Beneil Dariush faster, okay, yeah, but Beneil Dariush was coming off being knocked out by Charles Oliveira 4 months prior. So I think that's very relevant when discussing this fight because I really do believe that the first thing that people are going to bring up when breaking down this fight is that, okay, yeah, Arman Tsarukyan just knocked out Dariush faster than Oliveira. So that means Arman Tsarukyan is going to do that to Oliveira. I don't think that's how MMA math works. I don't think that's how fighting works. So let me break down this fight. So I'm really not considering that Beneil Dariush fight when it comes to breaking down this fight because like I said, Arman Tsarukyan knocked out Beneil Dariush, but he knocked out a Beneil Dariush that was coming off a knockout loss to Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira knocked him out when he was on a win streak. So I feel like that has to be taken into consideration. Like we can't just say, just because Arman Tsarukyan knocked out Beneil Dariush, that somehow he's better in the striking than Charles Oliveira. So when I think about this fight, I feel like you have to take a lot of those things into consideration. So let me give you guys my prediction. Let me tell you who I believe is going to win. I believe Charles Oliveira is going to win this fight. Now, I'm pretty sure that's not a surprise to many of you. To be totally honest with you guys, I don't really understand why Arman Tsarukyan is a favorite going into this matchup. That's not to say, because I know what a lot of you guys are going to say is that, oh, so you're saying that Arman Tsarukyan has no chance of winning? No, that is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I do not understand why Arman Tsarukyan is a favorite going into this fight. And I've gone on YouTube to try to figure out why is Arman the favorite. I watched Bedtime's prediction video. I don't think he made a good argument. I went on Twitter and yeah, they make solid cases that Arman Tsarukyan has a good chance of winning. However, they're picking Arman Tsarukyan pretty much saying that, yeah, the fight is pretty much a 50-50. So I don't understand why Arman Tsarukyan is such a big favorite. Is it because he just knocked out Beneil Dariush? Because Charles Oliveira also did that. And when you look at the resume before Beneil Dariush, I mean, Charles Oliveira has clearly faced a better competition. I mean, he's fought Michael Chandler. He's fought Dustin Poirier. He's fought Justin Gaethje. I understand that those fights with those guys were a back and forth. Obviously, Charles Oliveira, was almost finished in that first round against Michael Chandler, was able to come back in that second round, land that clean left hook that really put Michael Chandler down. In that fight against Dustin Poirier, he was getting stunned by Dustin Poirier in that first round. He was getting beat up pretty badly by, the boxing of Dustin Poirier. And I don't understand why Charles Oliveira was trying to box with Dustin Poirier. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. But in the second round, he made adjustments. He took the fight down to the mat where he's more comfortable with and he was able to win by a rear naked choke in the third round. And then in that fight against Justin Gaethje, he was able to drop Justin Gaethje and finish him in the first round. So, I understand that Charles Oliveira faces a lot of adversity in his fights. I completely understand that. But when you think of the competition and when you think of who he's doing this to, obviously Charles Oliveira has a huge advantage over Arman Tsarukyan. The fact that Charles Oliveira has been in so many big fights, like this is the biggest fight of Arman Tsarukyan's career. This is not the biggest fight in Charles Oliveira's career. Like you have to keep that into consideration. And like I said, I do believe that Charles Oliveira's experience is going to play a role. And when people discuss this fight, they talk about Charles Oliveira as if he were declining. Like, what fight are you watching? So I could see, yeah, you know what? Yep. Charles Oliveira is declining. Yep. He's 34 years old. He's clearly declining. No, like Charles Oliveira has shown no sign of declining. So I really don't understand why Arman Tsarukyan is such a big favorite. Like I said, that's not to say that I don't think Arman Tsarukyan has a chance of winning, because I do believe that if Arman Tsarukyan wins, is due to his grappling, because I do believe that Arman Tsarukyan is the best grappler that Charles Oliveira has ever faced. That's not to say that I think he's the best submission artist that Charles Oliveira has ever faced, but I do believe, I would not be surprised actually, if Arman Tsarukyan has more success with the grappling than Islam Makhachev did. I really would not be surprised, because Arman Tsarukyan has really good scrambles. He's really good at control. He has really nasty ground and pound, and he's also very strong. So I will not be surprised if Arman Tsarukyan wins with the grappling. And the way I see Arman Tsarukyan winning is not with the striking. I really don't believe he wins in the striking. I believe that Arman Tsarukyan is going to try to take down Charles Oliveira, control him, land elbows, land ground and pound shots, and either win a decision with control time and damage, or finish Oliveira with ground and pound. Also, another possibility could be if he hurts Charles Oliveira on the feet, and then he's able to land ground and pound shots or get on top of Charles in a dominant position and then finish him off that way. So I feel like if Arman Tsarukyan wins this fight, it's either going to be by a decision or a knockout. Now, like I said, I think Charles Oliveira has more ways to win. I really do, because I think Charles Oliveira is the better striker. I really do believe Charles Oliveira is the better striker on the feet. He has really good knees, really good left hook, really good right hand. Like I said, both of these guys are orthodox. I think both of these fighters are kind of susceptible to hooks. I kind of saw that in their game. Arman Tsarukyan keeps his guard very tight, so maybe that works against Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira obviously has a pressure style, has really good Muay Thai striking, really good left hook, really good right hand and stuff like that. Arman Tsarukyan, he has more of a leg kicking game. He has a versatile kicking game. He throws axe kicks, head kicks, body kicks, really nasty body kicks. In fact, I was rewatching that Gamrot fight, and man, Arman Tsarukyan throws really good kicks. So I think Charles Oliveira is just the more dangerous fighter on the feet. When I think about this fight, look, Arman Tsarukyan is also going to be the shorter fighter in there, and I think that's going to play a role in this fight. So I think that when it comes to the striking in this fight, I see Charles Oliveira winning the striking. And if you ask me, okay, who do you think is going to get hurt more in this fight? I really do believe Arman Tsarukyan has a high probability of getting hurt in this fight, because Charles Oliveira has a lot of power. He was able to drop Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje. Besides that fight against Dariush, who has Arman Tsarukyan really knocked out with like one punch knockout power or with his striking on the feet? No, when he finishes guys, it's with ground and pound shots. So Arman Tsarukyan isn't knocking guys out left and right when on the feet. You know what I'm saying? He's not knocking out guys on the feet, while Charles Oliveira, he really does hurt guys on the feet. He really does. He hurt, Justin Gaethje. He hurt Michael Chandler. He hurt Beneil Dariush on the feet as well. So I feel like that also has to be taken into consideration. The fact that I do believe that Charles Oliveira is the better striker on the feet, and he's also the best submission artist that Arman Tsarukyan has ever faced, because Arman Tsarukyan, he cannot just shoot for a single or a double leg against Charles Oliveira, because he might fall to a guillotine, and Charles Oliveira has a pretty nasty guillotine. So he has to be aware of that. So when I think of this fight, I feel like Charles Oliveira has more ways to win if he fights correctly, because, if he decides to pull guard and, be on his back and throw submissions against Arman Tsarukyan, it might not work, because Arman Tsarukyan is one of the best grapplers in the lightweight division. So I feel like Charles Oliveira needs to fight smart, because, if he spends a round on his back, they're going to give the round to Arman Tsarukyan. And even though I do think that Charles Oliveira has pretty good defense on the ground, like he's very good at, not receiving a lot of damage on the ground, and he's going to be trying to latch submissions, I still don't think it's a very good position for Charles Oliveira to be in this fight. So if I were Charles Oliveira, I would try to win this fight on the feet. And like I said, I feel like Charles Oliveira is going to win this fight. Like I said, that's not to say that Arman Tsarukyan cannot win this fight. When I think about this fight, I just think, look, Charles Oliveira has shown no sign of decline. I think he's a more dangerous fighter on the ground and on the feet. I feel like Arman Tsarukyan has that puncher's chance that we've been singing in the last couple of Oliveira fights. Like every time Charles Oliveira fights, what do people say? Charles Oliveira has a bad chin. He's going to get knocked out by blank fighter. I mean, people said that about Justin Gaethje. People said that about Dustin Poirier. Now, I understand that Arman Tsarukyan has the grappling base. Like, he has really, really good grappling, which is a different dynamic than like the Poirier, fight and the Gaethje fight and the Michael Chandler fight, even though Michael Chandler also has pretty good grappling. But the fact that I think that Arman Tsarukyan is nowhere near as dangerous on the feet as any of those guys, and I understand he's improving, but I really don't believe that, he has the power to really like earn the respect of Charles Oliveira. Because I mean, Charles Oliveira took really like significant strikes by Justin Gaethje, like Dustin Poirier. So I feel like Charles Oliveira is going to win this fight on the feet. I see him winning by KO TKO in the second round, or even latching up a submission, a guillotine, or rear naked choke. Because we saw in that fight against Gamrot when Gamrot started grappling against Arman Tsarukyan in that third round. Arman Tsarukyan gave up his back a little bit, and if he does that against Charles Oliveira will latch up a rear naked choke and submit Arman Tsarukyan. So I have to go with Charles Oliveira, guys. I really do have to go with Charles Oliveira, because I do believe that even though he's a little bit older, I think he has shown no sign of decline. I think he's the more dangerous fighter overall. He's a more skilled fighter overall. He has the experience on his side. I feel like both of the durability and cardio is about the same. I mean, maybe not, but it's hard to know with Arman Tsarukyan because he hasn't been facing the top lightweights. You know what I'm saying? So we really haven't seen him get tested against a very, very good striker. So I think that's the question going into this fight. Like, how's Arman Tsarukyan going to do with Charles Oliveira? Like, if I knew that Arman Tsarukyan had already fought like a Dustin Poirier or Justin Gaethje and was really able to beat those guys, and I'd be like, you know what? Arman Tsarukyan has a better chance of beating Charles Oliveira. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to say, okay, well, what about Islam Makhachev? Because I mean, Islam Makhachev was able to beat Charles Oliveira, and we really didn't know if Islam Makhachev was that kind of striker going into that matchup. Well, I think this is the thing. Obviously, we didn't know how good Islam Makhachev was. I mean, Islam Makhachev is a southpaw, and he's a lot more technical, a lot more powerful than Arman Tsarukyan. That left hand right hook was really effective against Oliveira, and I just don't see that being the case. And also, Islam Makhachev is also a pretty big guy, and like I said, I think Arman Tsarukyan is going to be the smaller guy in there. So I don't really see Arman Tsarukyan having the same success that Islam Makhachev had on the feet, because like I said, they're not the same type of strikers. Islam Makhachev is a southpaw, very technical, very defensively sound, and we've seen Arman Tsarukyan get hurt by guys like Joaquim Silva with a left hook. And if you're getting hurt by Joaquim Silva, Charles Oliveira also has a very good chance of hurting you on the feet. So ultimately, guys, I have to go with Charles Oliveira to win this fight. Look, I think Arman Tsarukyan is still the real deal. And even if he loses this fight, I still think he has a bright future in the lightweight division. Like I said, I just think I have to go with Charles, because I haven't really seen anything from Arman Tsarukyan for me to be confident that he beats Charles Oliveira or to pick him, in my opinion. Like, I know he's coming off that knockout over Dariush, but if I look at his fights before that, I think Charles Oliveira is more dangerous on the feet, and Arman Tsarukyan is very good with the grappling, but he hasn't faced a submission artist. He hasn't faced somebody that's as dangerous on the feet, and I feel like this is his first real test, and maybe the lights are too bright for him at UFC 300, while Charles Oliveira, this is not the biggest fight of his career. Like I said, this is not the biggest fight of his career. So I think that also has to be taken into consideration. So ultimately, like I said, I'm going with Charles Oliveira by KO/TKO or a submission. I could say submission, but I think really he's going to hurt him on the feet, and he's going to be able to finish him that way. I do think Arman Tsarukyan is going to have success. Look, he's very explosive on the feet. He has a versatile leg kicking game. So if Charles Oliveira doesn't respect him, he might get knocked out. That's very possible in a Charles Oliveira fight. But when I think about what's likely, I don't think it's likely. I think Charles is more likely to hurt him on the feet and to finish him off. And I think he is a more dangerous fighter. So ultimately, like I said, I'm going with Charles Oliveira, but I want to know what you guys think. Do you think Arman's going to win? Look, I know a lot of people are picking Arman Tsarukyan. I see a lot of people picking Charles Oliveira, but don't just put who you think is going to win. Give me a good reason. Like if you're picking Arman, I actually want to know why you're picking Arman Tsarukyan, and you can't just give me the same old NPC answer of oh, well, it's because he knocked out Beneil Dariush. That's not a good answer. Like give me ways that Arman Tsarukyan wins on the feet. Give me ways that he wins in the grappling, how he controls Charles. Like I think there's a lot of ways Arman Tsarukyan wins. Like I said, in my opinion, I don't understand why Arman is such a big favorite. In my opinion, this should be a pick'em fight, if not Oliveira being a slight favorite, just due to his experience, the fact that he has shown no sign of decline, and the fact that I don't think Arman Tsarukyan is like that good of a striker compared to the opponents that Oliveira has been facing. So anyway, guys, please make sure to like and subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.